12 foods that smart preppers always buy first are the very ones other people often overlook. Not because they are more expensive, not because they are rarer, but because they solve the exact problems that appear when a food stockpile actually starts being used. Many people stockpile rice, pasta, beans, and canned goods and think they are safe. But a kitchen full of food can still fail after the second week. Not because there are not enough calories, but because the meals become too dry, too bland, too repetitive. The body slowly gets tired, the mind slows down, and the desire to eat disappears. Smart preppers do not just ask, "How long will this food last?" They ask, "Can this food help me stay strong enough, alert enough, and still willing to keep eating after many days?" And the first item will surprise many people, because it is not the food that makes you the fullest. It is the food that helps you still want to keep eating. Let's count down. 12. Dried mushrooms. The thing that turns a food stockpile that is filling enough into something people still want to keep eating after many weeks. Most people walk past the dried mushroom section in the supermarket and think it is something for fancy dishes, or at most, an ingredient for a few special meals. So they keep doing what most food stockpiles out there are doing. Buying more rice, more pasta, more oats, more beans. The stockpile looks fuller. The calories look safer. But a food stockpile full of calories is not necessarily a food stockpile that can be used long-term. Then the second week begins. There is still plenty of food. No one is truly hungry. But the desire to eat starts to disappear. The meals that felt fine on day 3 now become hard to swallow on day 12. Many storage plans do not fail because they run out of food. They fail because people stop wanting to eat that food. This is something studies on long-term diets have repeatedly observed. Flavor monotony can reduce appetite even when calorie intake is still enough. That is why dried mushrooms appear in the food stockpiles of smart preppers earlier than most people think. Dried shiitake or porcini mushrooms contain natural glutamate, the compound that creates the rich, savory taste the body often connects with nutrient-dense, protein-rich foods. Just a small amount soaked in water and added to rice, soup, beans, or porridge can completely change the eating experience. The same calories, the same base ingredients. But the feeling when eating no longer feels like food to fight hunger. It starts to feel more like a real meal. A bag of dried mushrooms that costs only about $3 to $5 can change the flavor of dozens of meals. And that is the point new preppers often miss. They buy a lot of base foods, but they do not buy the things that keep those foods worth eating after many days. Beyond flavor, dried mushrooms also add vitamin D and B vitamins, micronutrients that often become lacking very quickly in a diet based mostly on rice, pasta, and canned foods. The biggest mistake is thinking a food stockpile only needs to be filling enough. In a long-term reality, the feeling of satisfaction after each meal is what keeps the whole system going. If kept in an airtight jar or a moisture-absorbing bag in a dry, cool place, dried mushrooms can usually maintain good quality for 1 to 3 years, sometimes longer if unopened. The biggest mistake is letting them absorb moisture after the bag has been opened, because once moisture comes back in, the flavor and texture will decline very quickly. A food stockpile that makes you lose your appetite after 10 days is not a strong food stockpile. It is just a room full of calories. 11. Bouillon cubes. The cheap item that keeps a food stockpile from turning into a psychological punishment after 2 weeks. Day 10, and all that is left is white rice and soft beans. No one is starving, but no one truly wants to eat anymore. One bouillon cube dropped into hot water turns a bland meal into something salty, warm, and easier to swallow. Then continue with the section. Many people stockpile food but completely overlook flavor. They look at a food stockpile like a calorie spreadsheet. How much rice? How many beans? How much protein? How many days they can survive? On paper, everything looks fine. But then the second week begins, and a problem that most people never prepared themselves for starts to appear. The same pot of rice, the same beans, the same smell, the same texture, day after day. No one is truly starving, but the desire to eat slowly begins to fade. This is something studies on emergency rations and long-term eating patterns have repeatedly documented. Flavor monotony is one of the biggest reasons people gradually reduce their food intake, even when plenty of food is still available. That is when bouillon cubes deliver value far beyond their few dollar price tag. One small box can create dozens of servings of broth or season dozens of meals made from rice, beans, pasta, or porridge. And the important part is not the calories it adds. The important part is that it changes the eating experience. The same bowl of white rice, but when it tastes richer, hotter, and more like a real meal, people tend to maintain a much more stable food intake. In long-term eating environments, the ability to keep wanting to eat is often just as important as the amount of food available. A small cube does not turn you into a chef, but it turns hot water into broth, dry rice into savory porridge, and bland beans into something people still want to keep eating. The biggest mistake new preppers make is building a food stockpile full of base foods, but having nothing that keeps those foods worth eating after many days. A jar of bouillon that costs about $3 to $5 can make dozens of repetitive meals noticeably more tolerable. And that is a return per dollar that very few other foods can match. Ordinary people see bouillon as seasoning. Smart preppers see it as a tool for maintaining appetite, morale, and eating habits during stressful times. Bouillon cubes usually have a shelf life of 18 months to several years, depending on the type. The important thing is not the date printed on the box, but keeping them away from moisture and air. A box of bouillon that gets damp quickly loses its aroma and can easily clump. People do not eat with logic alone. They eat through feeling, smell, and experience. A food stockpile that makes everyone sick of eating after 10 days is not a strong food stockpile. It is just a place holding a lot of calories that the body gradually no longer wants to touch. 10. Iodized salt. The item almost everyone thinks they already have, until the body starts lacking something they cannot see with the naked eye. Ask most people if they have salt stored. Most will say yes. And on the surface, that is completely true. Sea salt, pink salt, kosher salt. Premium-looking jars of salt sit beautifully on the kitchen shelf and often feel better than regular salt. But here's the problem many people do not realize. Most of those salts are usually not fortified with iodine. On a normal day, this may not seem important, because people still get iodine from many other sources: packaged foods, milk, seafood, or prepared meals. But when the diet begins shifting almost entirely to rice, beans, pasta, and pantry food for many continuous weeks, that gap starts to show up faster than most people think. The dangerous part is that iodine deficiency often does not show up first as hunger or an obvious sign on the body. It begins much more quietly: brain fog, reduced focus, fatigue, the feeling that thinking is slower than usual, and a decline in decision-making ability. In a stressful situation or crisis, that is a much bigger problem than a meal that lacks flavor. Adults only need about 150 micrograms of iodine per day, an amount so small that it is easy to overlook. But when familiar iodine sources disappear from the diet, deficiency can appear much faster than many people imagine. And the notable part is that the solution is extremely cheap. A box of iodized salt for about $1 to $3 can last a very long time and fix exactly one major nutritional gap that many modern pantries have. Ordinary people see salt as seasoning. Smart preppers see it as part of energy levels, alertness, and the ability to think clearly over a long period of time. The biggest mistake is thinking a pantry only needs enough calories to survive. In reality, a body that loses the ability to focus and make good decisions will start breaking down before the food truly runs out. 9. Dried seaweed. The small item that takes up almost no space, but can fix a gap that even a large bag of rice cannot. Most people never think about seaweed when preparing food. That is exactly why it gets overlooked. When building a food stockpile, most people focus on things that look more worth the money. Canned meat, rice, beans, pasta, oats, peanut butter. And on paper, all of that makes sense. Lots of calories, long shelf life, easy to store. But then a few weeks pass, and a quiet problem begins to appear. Not a lack of food, but the body starts lacking the small minerals we used to get every day without really noticing. This is what makes dried seaweed different. Just about 5 to 10 grams of dried seaweed can create noticeable flavor for an entire pot of soup or porridge. A $3 to $6 pack of dried seaweed can last for years and change the flavor of dozens of meals, while taking up almost no shelf space. It does not fill you up like rice, but it turns hot water into soup, turns white rice into something with flavor, and turns a dry, rigid food stockpile into something much easier to eat. Dried seaweed contains natural iodine, trace minerals, and a natural savory taste that most food stockpiles based on rice, pasta, and canned goods often lack. The notable thing is that adults only need about 150 micrograms of iodine per day, an amount so small that it is easy to overlook. But when the diet loses seafood, milk, and many familiar packaged foods, that iodine intake can drop very quickly. Iodine deficiency does not appear first as hunger. It often shows up quietly through fatigue, reduced focus, sluggishness, and the feeling that the body is not running the way it normally should. Ordinary people often overlook seaweed because they think it is just a side food. Smart preppers see something else. A light, durable, cheap source of minerals that adds flavor and requires almost no storage space. The biggest mistake is thinking that being full is enough. A food stockpile that only has heavy, filling items can look strong on the shelf, but be weak inside the body. 8. Nutritional yeast. The thing that turns cheap, dry, bland foods into meals that feel richer, more savory, and more complete without needing a refrigerator. Most people have never bought nutritional yeast in their lives. They see it as some strange powder for vegans or special diets online. So when building a food stockpile, they keep buying more familiar things. Rice, pasta, beans, oats, canned goods. The calories go up. The shelves look fuller. But then a few weeks pass, and a problem very few people prepared themselves for begins to appear. Not a lack of food, but every meal starts to feel the same. Bland, dry, and poor in experience. Rice is still there. Pasta is still there. Beans are still there. But the meals begin to feel more like fuel than real food. This is something studies on long-term diets often observe. When taste satisfaction drops, people tend to reduce their food intake over time, even when calories are still enough. And that is when nutritional yeast creates a difference much bigger than its appearance suggests. Nutritional yeast has a lightly rich, savory, slightly cheese-like flavor, something most long-term food stockpiles almost never have. Just 1 to 2 spoonfuls sprinkled over rice, pasta, soup, savory porridge, or popcorn can make the food feel noticeably richer. It does not turn a simple meal into something premium, but it makes the body feel less like it is eating dry, repetitive rations every day. The more important part is the one most people do not notice: B vitamins. Many types of nutritional yeast are fortified with B1, B2, B6, and B12, micronutrients that often drop very quickly when a long-term diet is based mostly on grains and packaged foods. B vitamin deficiency does not appear first as hunger. It often begins with fatigue, reduced energy, difficulty focusing, and the feeling that the body is operating more slowly than usual. A jar of nutritional yeast for about $5 to $8 can be used for dozens, even hundreds of meals, because each use only requires a very small amount. Ordinary people see it as an unnecessary extra. Smart preppers see something else: a cheap way to keep a food stockpile from turning into a long stretch of monotonous eating and quiet deficiency. A food stockpile that can keep people still wanting to eat after many weeks is always stronger than a food stockpile that is simply full of calories. Have you ever stockpiled something you first thought was very important, but after a few days, you almost did not want to eat it anymore? What was it? 7. Cornmeal. The thing that keeps a food stockpile from getting trapped in such a repetitive eating pattern that the body starts losing its appetite even while plenty of food is still available. Most people think that simply adding more rice or oats makes a food stockpile stronger. Fuller shelves mean greater safety. But then the second week begins, and something very few people prepare themselves for starts to appear. There is still plenty of food, but the desire to eat slowly fades. The same bowl of rice, the same bowl of oats, the same soft texture repeated day after day. This is something studies on long-term diets frequently observe. Monotony in texture and food form can sharply reduce appetite even when calories are still sufficient. That is why cornmeal creates far more value than its appearance suggests. From an ingredient that costs only about $1 to $2 per pound, you can make cornmeal porridge for breakfast, soft polenta for dinner, cornbread, flatbreads, or pan-fried cakes. Each one creates a completely different eating experience, even while using nearly the same base ingredient. The important thing is not only calories. The important thing is that the body does not feel like it is eating the exact same food for weeks. A bag of cornmeal stored properly can last for years and create dozens of meals with different textures. Ordinary people usually just stockpile more of the same thing. Smart preppers understand that small variety in the eating experience can determine whether a food stockpile is truly usable long-term. A food stockpile full of calories that makes people tired of eating after 10 days is not as strong as it looks. 6. Red lentils. The small protein source that gets overlooked until fuel and time start becoming real problems. Many people buy dry beans but skip red lentils because they think they are too small or not worth the money. On the supermarket shelf, they do not feel as solid as a large bag of rice or heavy cans of food. But when the power goes out, gas is limited, or cooking has to be done with a restricted amount of fuel. Cooking speed starts to matter more than most people think. Red lentils do not need to be soaked beforehand and usually cook in about 15 to 20 minutes, faster than almost any other type of dry bean. A regular pot of beans can sometimes take more than an hour to become fully tender. That difference is not too big on a normal day. But when you have to conserve gas, electricity, or firewood for many weeks, it starts becoming a real advantage. What many people do not notice is that red lentils almost melt into the food as they cook. They make soups, porridge, or stews feel softer, easier to eat, and less tiring when you have to eat them continuously for many days. This is a problem traditional pantries rarely think about: the fatigue of having to chew and eat overly heavy foods day after day. 1 pound of red lentils usually costs only about $1 to $3, but provides very high protein and energy for each minute of cooking. Ordinary people see it as a side item. Smart preppers see something else. A fast, soft, fuel-saving protein source that is much more practical when everything is no longer operating normally. A protein source that requires too much fuel is no longer cheap when fuel starts becoming scarce. Have you ever stockpiled a large amount of something, but after a few days no longer wanted to eat it? Comment that food below. 5. Sardines packed in oil. One of the few foods that can be eaten immediately while providing protein, fat, and minerals in the same small can. Something very interesting happens when people buy canned food. They often choose the item that looks healthier on the label. Tuna packed in water, lean meat. Foods that look cleaner and contain less oil tend to feel safer. But in a food stockpile meant to be used for many weeks, the issue is not just protein. The issue is whether the body still has enough energy, enough satiety, and enough nutrition to keep functioning steadily. That is why sardines packed in oil are far stronger than they look. One small 3.75 ounce can often provide more than 15 to 20 grams of protein, plus fat, omega-3s, vitamin D, and calcium from the soft edible bones. And most importantly, it can be eaten immediately. No cooking, no water, no electricity, no refrigerator. In a real situation, foods that depend less on the system are the ones that last the longest in the pantry. The point many people overlook is the oil. Many people pour that oil away because they think it is unhealthy. But when your meals are mostly rice, pasta, oats, or beans, that very oil helps the food become softer, more filling, and much more satisfying. One can of sardines can turn a bowl of white rice into a complete meal in just a few minutes. One can of sardines usually costs only about $1.50 to $3, but delivers a nutrient density that very few canned foods at the same price can compare with. Ordinary people see sardines as cheap food with a strong smell. Smart preppers see a source of protein, fat, and minerals packed into a small can that can last for years on the shelf. Most canned sardines have a shelf life of about 3 to 5 years if the can is not dented, swollen, or rusty. The best storage place is a cool, dark area with stable temperature, not a hot garage in the summer. The biggest mistake is looking at food only by the amount of protein on the label. In long-term reality, the body does not just need protein to survive. It needs fat, minerals, and meals that make you still want to keep eating after many days. 4. Whole milk powder. The thing that turns water into nutrition and turns dry meals into something that feels closer to normal life. When building a food stockpile, many people think of rice, pasta, beans, or canned goods first. Milk powder is often completely overlooked, or if they do buy it, they choose the non-fat version because they think it is lighter and healthier. But in a long-term pantry, familiarity and the ability to maintain steady meals matter more than the appearance of the nutrition label. Whole milk powder does something very few other dry foods can do. It adds a soft, creamy, familiar feeling to meals that are usually very dry and repetitive. A warm glass of milk, a bowl of oats mixed with milk, or a little milk added to soup can make the whole meal feel completely different. This is not just about calories. This is comfort food, the thing that helps people feel like they are still living in a normal rhythm instead of merely surviving on stored food. In addition, whole milk powder provides calcium, protein, and fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K. A container of milk powder for about $4 to $8 can usually make about 20 servings or more, depending on the size and how it is used. That makes it one of the most space-efficient sources of nutrition in the pantry. Ordinary people see milk powder as something for baking or children. Smart preppers see it as a way to restore the feeling of a real meal on days when everything starts becoming too dry, too bland, and too similar. The biggest mistake is thinking all calories are the same. In long-term reality, the foods that make the body feel nourished and comfortable are what help the whole system last longer. 3. Ghee, the stable fat source that many people only begin to understand the real value of after the power has been out for a few days. After a few days without electricity, the butter in the refrigerator starts going bad, but the jar of ghee still sits quietly on the shelf. Just one small spoonful added to rice or beans makes the food softer, richer, and more filling. Then continue with the section. On a normal day, most people think they already have enough fat in the kitchen, a bottle of cooking oil, some butter in the refrigerator. It seems like there is nothing to worry about. But after just a few days without electricity, the problem starts appearing faster than many people expect. Butter spoils easily because it still contains water and milk solids. Some oils begin developing off smells when used continuously at high heat, and that is when many pantries realize they have calories, but lack a truly stable fat source. Ghee solves exactly that gap. Because almost all the water and milk solids have been removed, it can last for months after opening without refrigeration if stored properly. It handles very high heat, burns less easily than regular butter, and works extremely well with simple meals like rice, beans, porridge, or pan-fried flatbreads. In real situations, the foods that are both stable and flexible are the ones that survive the longest in a pantry. An unopened jar of ghee can last more than a year in a cool, dark place. After opening, the most important thing is always using a clean, dry spoon to prevent moisture or food crumbs from reducing its stability. But the more important part is the feeling of fullness and energy levels. Many food stockpiles have enough rice, enough beans, and enough oats, but still leave people feeling like the meal is missing something. Studies on long-term diets show that lack of fat is one of the main reasons appetite drops sharply, even when calories are still sufficient. Just one spoonful of ghee, around 120 calories, can make food softer, more filling, and noticeably more complete. A jar of ghee that costs about $8 to $15 can last a very long time, because only a small amount is needed each time. Ordinary people see ghee as a more expensive version of butter. Smart preppers see a stable fat system that does not depend on electricity, does not require refrigeration, and can keep dry meals from turning into a psychological burden after many weeks. 2. Apple cider vinegar, the item many people see as a health trend, but is actually one of the things that helps a food stockpile function most steadily over the long term. A bottle of apple cider vinegar does not make your pantry shelf look more impressive. It is not as heavy as a bag of rice. It does not create the same feeling of security as a case of canned goods, and that is why many people overlook it when preparing food. But in a long-term pantry, sometimes the small items are the things that keep the whole system running smoothly. When the diet begins revolving around rice, beans, oats, and dry foods for many continuous weeks, digestion starts becoming part of the problem. A pantry does not fail only because of a lack of calories. It also fails when the body begins feeling heavy, sluggish, and tired from processing the same type of food every day. That is where apple cider vinegar creates a difference. Just 1 or 2 small spoonfuls added to a pot of beans or stew can soften the texture and make the meal feel easier after eating. The light acidity also helps repetitive meals feel less monotonous. In long-term diets, small changes in flavor often create a bigger difference than people expect. Apple cider vinegar also has one very rare advantage in a pantry. It practically has no real expiration date if stored properly. One bottle costing about $3 to $6 can be used for cooking, helping clean food preparation surfaces, or added to water and soup to change the flavor. Ordinary people see apple cider vinegar as seasoning. Smart preppers see it as a tool, that helps the pantry operate more smoothly from the inside. In long-term reality, a tired digestive system can weaken a pantry almost as quickly as a lack of food. 1. Multivitamins. The item that does not make a pantry look fuller, but may be the cheapest insurance layer against the micronutrient gaps that almost every food stockpile eventually develops. The pantry is still full, the rice is still there, and the canned goods still line the shelves. But after a few weeks, the body starts feeling sluggish, irritable, and unable to focus. The problem is not hunger. The problem is the micronutrient gaps quietly building in the background. Then continue with the section. When building a pantry, most people naturally think in very understandable terms. How many pounds of rice, how many cans of beans, how many calories, and how much protein. And honestly, that is not wrong. But there is one problem many new preppers only realize after a few weeks of eating pantry food. The body does not operate on calories alone. A food stockpile can contain tens of thousands of calories and still quietly wear the body down if micronutrients are lacking for too long. When the diet starts revolving around rice, pasta, oats, and canned foods, small gaps slowly begin appearing. Vitamin C, vitamin D, B vitamins, zinc, folate, and many other micronutrients. This is not the kind of problem that appears on the first day. It builds more slowly, and that is exactly what makes it more dangerous. The scary part is that the first signs are usually not hunger. They often begin with ongoing fatigue, lower energy, irritability, difficulty focusing, and the feeling that the body is operating less sharply than normal. In long-term situations, the ability to keep the mind alert and the body functioning steadily is often just as important as the amount of food left on the shelf. Multivitamins usually have a shelf life of about 1 to 2 years or longer, if kept sealed and protected from heat and moisture. The bathroom is one of the worst places to store them because humidity breaks down the vitamins much faster than many people realize. A bottle of multivitamins costing about $10 to $20 often contains 100 to 300 tablets, lasts a very long time if stored properly, and can help fill many micronutrient gaps at once. It does not replace real food. It does not make a pantry perfect, but it is the cheapest buffer against one of the biggest weaknesses of low-cost pantries. Lots of calories, but not enough micronutrient diversity. New preppers often obsess over protein and calories. Smart preppers understand that keeping the body functioning steadily over the long term is the real goal. A pantry full of rice may keep you full, but it does not automatically keep the body functioning well enough to get through the difficult weeks ahead. After these 12 foods today, the most important thing to remember is not how much you manage to stockpile, but whether those items can truly help your family stay steady when difficult times last longer than expected. A kitchen full of food is not automatically a strong kitchen. If the food is too dry, too bland, lacking fat, lacking minerals, and lacking the feeling of enjoyment, then over time it starts feeling more like a burden than preparation. Smart preppers do not buy food just to make the pantry shelves look more reassuring. They buy so the body still has enough strength, the mind stays clear enough, and the meals are still worth eating after many days. Because sometimes, the thing that keeps an entire family moving forward is not the biggest item on the shelf, but the small item you thought about before everyone else realized it mattered.